Master
Hi,
Han.
this is a coding class with Mr. Han, and I'm with my student
Tanay.
Tanay. And today is it's a schedule change, so today is actually a Wednesday. So it's Wednesday, July 8th, 2020. Okay, and okay, you had a question about nested conditional if statements. And let me see. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen. 1 second.
Master Han.
Yeah,
For some reason, I can only hear you, but it's like really quiet.
really quiet. Okay,
Like
I'm
you're
gonna.
almost muted.
Okay, I'm gonna increase. I'll increase. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. How's that?
Yeah, I can hear you more clearly.
Okay, because I'm wearing
Headphones.
yeah. So because there's a lot of noise today, because there'll be construction inside the house and there's landscaping outside. So yeah, sorry about that. I'll try. Yeah,
Um,
I'll try to be a little louder because there is going to be more noise today. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you had a question. Good. Yeah. Great. You had a question about nested if loops, if statements. So, okay. Can you see my screen?
yeah. It's
What?
what we did last time.
Yeah. Why is it on? Okay. There's a lag here. Okay. Doesn't seem to be getting. Okay. Here we go. Sorry. Okay. So, yeah, nested if statements. You want to avoid doing that because it does make it harder to understand what the code does. Okay, so let's say nested. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's do this. I'll say it's the like first if
Time for your class. How are you doing it?
first if condition. So look, you see, you have this if condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if homework done is equal to true, then we print first if condition, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then we can have, you have to keep in mind that this, the colon, every time we see a colon, that means that there's going to be a block of code, okay? This block of code is separate from the main block, okay? They're two different things. All the lines of code that are here that are up against that are not indented, that's the main block. Every time you tab or put spaces, that is a different block of code. Okay, so basically what happens is then I have to explain to you what scope is. Okay, and I'll use an analogy to help explain that. But let me answer your first question. So so if I put another if statement, so I would do like a clean room, right? Is that equal to true, right? And then I would print. So this would be the second if condition, okay? Or conditional, I'm sorry. Or the second conditional, right? So it's a conditional inside a conditional, okay? So if homework done is false, what happens? Hey, your
Mm,
face is chopped off. Don't chop off your face. It doesn't make you look good. Okay?
mm,
If the homework done is false, what happens?
if homework done is
Right.
fall.
Homework done is actually false here. So if homework is done is false, then what happens?
Hmm.
Do we see anything? Does this do these lines of code, lines 44 to 43, do we see any output from it?
No.
No, you're not going to see anything, okay? You're not going to see anything because homework done is false, okay? So if I make homework done true, okay, so I'm going to make homework done true. Okay, so if homework done is set to true, I just did that, right? I changed it to true, okay? So now from lines 44 to 43, what will we see? We'll see any output from that. If homework done is true, Tanay did his homework. Okay. So then what do we see?
If I did my homework, would
If it's true, homework done is set to true. If it is true, what happens? What do we see?
if it is true, then you'll see print first conditional.
Right, we'll see okay. But clean room is actually false. Clean room is false. I mean, sorry, room clean is false. So what are we going to see? So we'll see first conditional, that will print. Will this second conditional print?
No.
No. Okay. When do we see, when does this print first conditional and second conditional? When do they both print?
When clean room and homework done are both true.
Yeah, so they're both true. Okay. Now you can see that there's one possibility, right? You see nothing. You don't see anything that prints out. If homework done is false, if it's not true, then nothing prints. Okay. If homework done is true, then we will see first conditional print. But if clean room is false, then we only see the first conditional. Okay. If homework done and clean room are both true, then we'll see first conditional and second conditional. Okay. So there are four possibilities. Okay. There are four possibilities, but only two of them do we see actually print anything. Okay. So what happens when I added another conditional? If I put a condition inside a conditional inside a conditional, or if statement inside if statement, what happens? What happens to our code? Is it easier to understand?
Wait, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear all of it.
If I have one condition, right? If I have one condition.
Okay.
But now I have a condition inside a conditional inside a conditional. I have an if statement inside an if statement. What's the difference between one if statement versus having an if statement inside an if statement? And we can
the second one is nested.
Right, but what is happening to the code? How would you describe what's happening to the code?
I don't know really. Well, the code is being nested.
Right, but is it easy to understand? Is it less easy to understand?
It's harder to understand.
It's harder to understand, right? Okay,
yep.
But this is actually a pretty simple example, right? This is a really simple example.
Yep.
Okay. First condition. Okay. Okay, so let's see. No, I think we want to do this. Okay. So what do you think this? So what do you think? I have another example. So I have lines 45 and 46. If homework done is equal to true or clean room is equal to true, I print first conditional or second conditional is true. Okay.
Is that called an or statement?
Yeah. So instead of having these nested, I could set up. I could do it in one. I could have I could collapse the two if statements, nested if statement, into one if statement. Okay.
Hmm. How
Now,
does that
which of these
exactly?
two? I'm sorry.
How does that exactly work?
Well, in this situation, right? In
Mm-hmm.
lines 44 to 43,
24 to 43.
right? So if the first condition is true, then I print something. But only but only if but only if the second condition is true. Only if both conditions are true do I actually print both. Okay? Now what will print, what has to be true in this, in line 45? What has to be true for us to print anything?
Would have to be true.
What has to
Um,
be true?
um, either homework done has to be true, or clean room has to be true.
Okay. So either have to be true or both have to be true. Okay. What happens if I put an and? When does this print? First conditional. When does this print?
Um, when they're both true.
When they're both true. Okay. So when they're both true. Okay. Now, what would you say is the difference between this and this? What is the difference? What is the main difference between the nested if statement and just having one if statement? Which is easier to understand?
What's easier to understand, a nested or an or
Or the
the
flat one? So we say flat. Flat is better.
yeah,
Flat
probably
is better than nested. Okay. So which is easier for you to understand?
flat.
The flat, right? Okay. So that's the main difference. So we want to avoid, but you have to be careful. What is it that you want the code to do? Okay. The problem with these nested if statements is it can be very hard to understand what is it that you want it to do. Okay. And then usually, I would say all the time, mostly, you could just make it flat. Not only is it easier to understand, but it's also easier to read and easier to code. Okay. Okay. Does that help?
Oh, hmm.
I really can't think of many situations where you want to have nested if statements. But if you see
There's
other coders doing that, what do you
I
know about that coder?
have to tell them that they're doing
Well, you don't
that.
want to tell them that, but you'll know right away that
Like tell them that nested is bad because it
well,
and
I don't
or
think
not
it's
bad,
well,
but
it's
it's
probably not a good idea to tell them that they're doing bad. So I would say only if they asked you for help. But generally, if somebody asks you to look at their code and they want your help, then yeah, then you would say, nested is.
I but if I saw them and they didn't ask for my help, I'd go over to them and say like
Well, they wouldn't. That's
it's
not.
kind of
It
hard
would
to
not be.
read.
That would not be a good idea.
Why?
You're not gonna make friends that way. That's not a good idea. That's not good. I would say if you're the tech lead, or if you're the project manager or the project leader, yeah, or you're a if you're a senior developer, yeah, it's your job to do that. It's your job to go around and make sure that the junior developers, the new coders, are coding at a higher level, right? Because your whole team will look bad if you have coders doing nested if statements. Okay. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're at the same level, if you're not actually if you're not above them in the company, then it's not a good idea to go around just telling people like they did that they're doing it wrong, because you're not going to make friends doing that. Okay.
Okay.
Also, this lets you know right away if you see somebody's code. Now, this is the uh, you have to understand. It's something we call a code snippet. I'm going to type it out for you. Do you know what do you think a code snippet means?
I think snippet means like part.
Yeah, part. Okay. So I would say it's like a sample. It's like a code sample. Okay. Because if you because because when you become an adult, you don't have time. You don't have time to look at hundreds and hundreds of lines of code. You're just too busy. You don't have time to do that. But you'll ask people to show you a snippet. Okay. So maybe 50, 100 lines of code, right? You want to see a snippet of their code. And then right away, you can tell if they know how to code or they don't know how to code. Okay. And one of the ways you would know would be if you saw what? Are
If
you
I
okay?
saw what?
Well, how would you know if somebody showed you an example, 50, 100 lines of their code, a code snippet, right? How would you know right away if they're a good coder or a bad coder? How would you know?
If they're doing hard coding,
Right, hard coding. And what we just talked about today, right now,
or
you saw them do what?
or they're doing nested if
Right.
statement.
If you see a lot of nested if statements, unless they have a good reason, a really, and I can't really think of one. If they have I mean, they have to have a really good reason. I cannot think of one why they would need to do nested if statements, because you can flatten it by making one bigger condition. Okay. So unfortunately, you have to keep in mind conditionals are generally bad. Conditionals are generally bad.
Wait, then
Conditionals are bad. Let's say, okay, why are conditionals bad? Why are conditionals bad?
I don't really know.
Because what the computer does, the program
Mhm.
has, then you increase the number of branches. Branching. Do you understand what branching means?
No.
So the path that the computer program can take, you increase the different. So every time we have a conditional, you have two possibilities, right? Right.
Mm,
So if we have an if statement, right? So either that if statement will get triggered and something will happen, or nothing will happen. If we have if else, one of the two possibilities will happen, right? Path A or path B. Okay. So we're increasing the possibilities, and we're increasing the complexity of the code. Okay. Now it's important for you to understand what conditionals are, but but is it possible to code without conditionals? What do you think? You think it's
no,
possible?
never. It'll never be possible ever.
Okay. Today your video's off again.
Again?
Yeah.
Come on. Is it on now?
No, it's still off.
Um, let me try something. Oh wait. Again, I accidentally went into safe driving mode. I'll turn it off.
I have no idea. What is safe driver modal?
Is it better now?
Okay. Now this is something I didn't want to have to tell you now because it doesn't make any sense, right? It is possible to code without conditionals. Okay? I'm not saying that that's the way you want to do it all the time because there will be situations where you will want to use conditionals. Okay? But it is possible to code without conditionals. Okay? But that's a level of coding that's at a lot higher level. Okay? So I would say that's like at a black belt level. Okay? Once you get to that level, then you can code without conditionals or using less conditionals. Okay?
Okay.
But you need to understand what a conditional is so that you can understand how you cannot, so you can code without having to code conditionals. Am I making any sense?
No.
Okay.
Well, you said it wouldn't make sense.
Well, you have
and
to
then-
understand. You have to understand. Well, it doesn't make sense right now. You have to understand what it is in order to understand how you can not do it. Okay. I can't explain. You can't understand what bitter is, right? If
Wait, I
you,
can't
if you
what?
don't know what sweet is, if you don't know what something sweet tastes like, then you don't understand what bitter is, right? If everything tastes bitter, right?
Yeah.
If
You think
nothing is normal, right? If everything tastes bitter, if everything you ate and drank was bitter, right? You
Mhm.
wouldn't know what sweet was, right?
Yep.
I'm sorry. You need to know what bitter is in order to understand
No,
what sweet is, okay? You have to understand, you have to taste something sweet to know what bitter is. Is that making any sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just telling you, I'm not going to explain it. I'm not going to show you how because it requires you to understand object-oriented programming. So we're not there yet. So we're still doing procedural programming right now. Functional programming. OOP, not op, OOP. Okay.
Wop.
Okay, so let's go back here. And okay. Now look at this example, right? I'm finishing up here. If you look at this example, you see how many different paths do we have if we look at this if else statement? How many paths do we have here? How many paths? How many possibilities do we have here?
You can have. Well,
Tanay, stop playing with the Legos. It's coming into the audio.
I don't have any Lego.
I don't know. Something's making some sound. How many paths? How many different paths do we have here? So we have a path A, right? So we have a path B.
Four paths.
We're 4 paths, okay? So every time we add an if, right? Every time we add another path, what's happening to our code?
Every time you get another path, then there's another possibility.
Right. So what's happening to our program?
What's happening?
Yeah. Is it getting easier to understand or harder to understand?
Harder.
Becoming harder to understand, okay? Try to imagine a map, right? If there's one road, between point A and point B, right? Then how many ways is there to get to point A from A to B? Let's say your home to your school, okay? There's only one road, okay? There's only one road on the map. So how many ways is there to get from your home to your school?
One way.
Only one way, okay? Now let's say there are 2 roads.
Okay.
So how many ways are there to get to your school now?
2.
Let's say 2, right? Now what happens when there's 3, 4, 5, 6?
6 ways.
No.
Said 3, 4, 5, 6.
No, it multiplies. It multiplies.
Multiplies by 1. It adds by 1 every time.
It's not linear. No.
Wait, 3 paths.
Because if you look at a map, right? Let's look at any map, right? And if there are lots and lots of roads and streets, right? How many different paths are there from point A from your school to your where your school is, right? And don't give out any of your personal information, but where your school is. How many different ways is there to get to your school? There's only one way?
I don't know.
But it's not one road, right?
No, definitely not.
There are lots of streets and roads connecting between you and your school, right?
Yep.
Right? So how many different ways are there to get? It's not the number of roads or streets. It's many, many different ways to get to your school, right?
It's the number of intersections.
Right. There are a lot of, how many intersections are there?
I don't know.
A lot. A lot.
Hmm.
Otherwise, if there was if something was blocking traffic, how would you get to school?
If there's a lot of traffic, then I would obviously take a shortcut.
Right. You would have to go around it, right? If there were no intersections, if there was only one road, then you wouldn't get to be able to go to school because the traffic would block your path.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So every time you add if you add a conditional, it increases the number of roads. Okay. So increases the number of paths. Okay. So that's not, I mean, it's good that your school has a lot of different, there are a lot of different roads and streets between you and your school. Okay. So the bus driver can reroute if there's something blocking his path, right? His or her path. Okay. The problem with coding is when there are many possibilities, then unfortunately errors creep in. Can you see that? The more paths there are, the more errors will creep in. Okay? So that's generally a bad thing. Okay? That's generally a bad thing. Okay? How many elifs can I add to this code? Is there a limit to how many elifs I can add?
No.
No. Okay. Now another thing that you have to see is when you see a coder, if you see a coder with and their if else statement is like lots, if there are lots and lots of different paths, is that good coding or bad coding?
Hard coding.
Not hard coding, but I would say it's bad. The coder is not thinking clearly. Okay.
Yep.
The highest level coder is a coder where there are no conditionals. Okay.
No, that's not possible.
Okay, I understand you're saying it's not possible, but I'm saying I'm telling you it is. If you see a coder and their code has very little or no conditionals, that is a very high level coder. Okay, that's a very high level. I'm saying you're right. Most coders can't do that. Most coders can't do that. Okay, but coders who can do that, they're at a very high level. Okay.
What if they do that, but they're still making a lot of mistakes and need help?
I'm sorry.
What if they can do that, but they're still making a lot of?
Well, no, that would be a contradiction. Okay. Most coders have errors in their code. It's unavoidable. Okay. But it's a number of mistakes and mistakes of errors. Okay. Bad coders will have more mistakes than more experienced coders. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So that's another sign of a really good coder. Coders who use very little or no conditionals. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And unfortunately, and actually sad to say, I'm not at that level. I need to use conditionals. That's the way I think. I need to use conditionals. Okay. It'd be really hard for me to code without conditionals. Okay. So I'm not at that level. Okay. But I know enough to know that the highest level coder can code without using conditionals. Okay. Their mastery of coding concepts and coding languages is at a very high level. Okay. I know it doesn't make any sense to you right now. I know it doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense right now.
Yep. That is
Well, you have to keep in mind. You just learned about it. I just taught it to you today. Okay, so just letting you know. So I have a session with you today and tomorrow. So between now and tomorrow, I want you to work on these two looping coding exercises. Okay, so I'll just cover it right now. Okay, so I already have a code that you can just start to mess around with. You can copy and paste this code, or you can just click on this link.
Okay.
So if you click on this looping badge requirements link, it will open up a Solar Learn page where it has the, well, you don't have a Solar Learn account, but you can use this to play around with the code. Okay, so I already set it up, so you don't have to retype everything.
Okay.
Once it loads up. Okay. Okay, so I have two loops. I have a for loop here. Okay. It prints, the output is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the other one prints same thing. It's a while loop. It prints the same thing. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Okay, if I run the code, and you'll see that the output is exactly the same. Do you see that?
Okay.
Okay, the output is exactly the same. Okay, so you can use this code to work on the exercises, the two problems. So I have two code challenges. Okay, so I want you to take the, not now, after after this session, and then work on it. Okay. So I want you to code a for loop that outputs the following output: 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, each on its own line. Okay, each on its own line. Okay, and then for the while loop, I want the same output: 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Okay, so that's the so that's the code challenge I want you to work on between after this session and then until I see you tomorrow. Okay.
So I have,
And then, if obviously, try to do as much as you can. If you're confused, I will, we'll work on it together tomorrow. Okay.
okay.
So I have the simple for loop. Okay. And I've already shown you a for loop before. So this range function will generate what we call yield, or generate a number, integer. So the first integer it will generate will be 0. Okay. So if I
Okay.
run the code, right, we'll see that we see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
Oh my God.
Okay. And then in this while loop, we see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So every time it loops, okay, x becomes 0, and then next x becomes 0 first, and then it prints 0, right? And then it goes back up to line 7, and then x becomes 1, then it prints 1. Are you following me?
And then it becomes two print
Then 2,
two.
okay.
Three,
Now, when x
4.
becomes 4, it prints 4. Then can you tell me what happens?
Then the code
The
stops.
code stops. The code stops because range stops. The range function says, oh, now I'm going to hit 5. X cannot be 5. Cannot be 5. 5 is a stopping number. So it stops. And then x, so the for loop is told to stop. Okay? The for loop is told to stop. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to open up Python Tutor, and I'll show you, it'll show you, so we'll step through it in Python Tutor. Okay. We'll step through it. Okay. I don't think I did that with you before. I don't think we did that before. Now, the thing about learning the code is you learn how to get the computer to do the same thing over and over and over. Instead of you doing it over and over, you get the computer to do it over and over. Okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
So you get the computer to do the work for you, right? Okay. Now, this one is very simple because all you're doing is asking to print a number, right? But there's other things you could have the computer do, right?
Okay.
Like send email. So send email to let's say 1,000 people, right? So you would set up a for loop to do that for you. Okay.
Okay. Oh wait. Never mind.
Or let's say you wanted the computer to send, let's say 5,000 text messages to 5,000 different people, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to waste your time doing that. Have the computer do it, right? So you would have to get the computer to loop, okay? So X, you see here,
Mr.
X,
Han,
yes.
do I have to know how to loop to learn oop? Because you just take the L out.
No, that's not how it works. Okay, so X is 0 right now, right? X is 0. So it's going to print 0, right? Print 0. And you see how the red arrow went back to the for loop header? Okay, you see it went back up there? Do you see that?
Wait. Oh yeah, the red arrow went back up.
Right. That's where the computer is. That's where the computer is, okay? The computer can only do one thing at a time. It's only because it does one thing at a time really, really fast that it tricks you into thinking that the computer can do more than one thing at a time. Okay? But the computer can only do one thing at a time. Now the modern computers, right, like my laptop, it actually has more than one CPU. Okay? So there you could say that there's like two computers inside the laptop. Okay? But that's not because the computer can do two things at a time. It's because there are two computers. If I have two laptops, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that the computer can do two things at the same time. It just means I have more computers. Okay? So computers cannot do more than one thing at a time. Okay? But you can be
wait like a million CPUs.
well, because computers have more than one CPUs now inside, so you can get tricked. Now, also, it's possible if the CPU does one thing, if let's say it's printing and then it's downloading something, right? It can't do both at the same time. What's happening is it works on the downloading, stops, and then it works on the printing, stops, and then works on the downloading, stops, and then you see it switches back and forth, right? But that doesn't mean it's doing two things. It's not doing two things at the same time. Okay. Can you talk to two people on the phone at the same time?
Well, unless you have a group chat.
Right. But if you have two phones, right? You're
Yeah.
not really talking to both people at the same time. You're
No.
talking to one person, and then you're talking to the other person, then you're talking to the other person. You're switching back and forth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really fast and you keep switching back and forth, it can seem like you're talking to two people at the same time, right?
But you're actually.
But you're not, right? You're not actually doing that. You're actually talking to
the same person.
You're talking to two people, but you're switching back and forth.
Yep. Okay. Master Han.
Yes.
I need to wash my hands.
Okay. I'm gonna stop the recording. Pause. Recording. Yeah, Eddie wants to get to your level. That's what his mom said. That's what his mom said.
Okay.
Mom said that he really, really wants to. The mom is not pushing, He wants to do, which is good. That's what I want. Okay. So X is 0, right?
Okay.
So when we go back to this for loop header, what happens to X?
Then X turns into 1.
Right, because the range is generating a new number. Okay?
Yep.
So you see X becomes 1. Now what's going to happen here?
Then it's going to print 1.
Print 1. It's very simple, right? And then we go back to the for loop. X becomes 2, prints 2, bop, dot, dot, dot. And then X is 4. Now what happens here? X is 4 now, so what's going to happen with range?
Then it's going to stop.
It's going to stop because range will stop generating any numbers. So once the range function stops generating more numbers, stops. Okay? And there we see the red arrow disappeared, right? When the red arrow disappears, that means done. Okay? Now it says right here, actually says the arrow, the shadow when you see the shadow of the arrow, that means this was the last line to get executed. Okay? It stops. Okay?
Okay.
Now I'm gonna change this to a while loop. Okay? Now remember, when we do the while loop, we have to code a counter first. Okay? I'm gonna actually call it counter and call it 0. Okay? So while counter is less than 5, then it's going to keep looping. So there's a condition, okay? So with the while loop, we have a condition. When this condition is false, the while loop stops, okay? When the condition is true, the while loop keeps going, okay? So we have a counter, then we have condition for the counter, then we have whatever it is that we're doing, and this while loop is very simple. All we're doing is printing X. That's all we're doing, okay? I'm sorry, wrong. I did that wrong. It's not X, it's counter. Okay, sorry, counter.
No counter. Fine.
Now, we also, every time, then the last thing we need to do inside the block, inside this block of code here, we need to increment. We need the counter to go up, okay? If the counter doesn't go up, then the counter is never equal to 5. If the counter is never equal to or greater than 5, then this while loop will be an infinite while loop. It'll just keep looping, okay? We don't want that. We want it to stop. Eventually we want to stop, okay?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so counter is a variable. It's an integer variable set to 0, right? So we're gonna so the next thing we do is the counter less than 5? Is the counter less than 5?
No.
No.
I mean, yeah, it is 5, less
Okay,
than 5.
it's less than 0, right?
Sorry.
So then we're gonna go inside the loop. Oops, I did something wrong. I'm sorry, I did something wrong. Okay, sorry. Okay, now then it's gonna go inside and it's going to then print the counter, right? 0. And then its counter is going to go up by 1. It's going to increase by 1. You see that? It went up by 1. Then we go back to the while loop header. Is counter still less than 5?
Yes.
What is counter now?
Counter is now 1. Now
1.
0.
Okay. It's not 0, it's 1. Okay. So then it's true. So we're going to print 1. Then now what are you going to do next? We printed 1. What's going to happen to the counter now?
Gonna turn into 2.
2. It's going to go up by, right? It's going to go, now we go back. Is counter still less than 5?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, so we'll just go do that. Okay. Okay, now here. Now, what is counter now? Counter is what? What is
4.
counter now? 4. What's going to happen after I execute?
After you execute that last line, it's gonna either stop. No, it's gonna stop. The thing is gonna stop.
What is counter going to be after I execute line 4?
Counter is gonna be 5. No.
5, right. Counter is 5. We go back to the while loop header. Is counter less than 5?
Nope.
No, it's equal to 5. It's 5, okay? So then what happens to the while loop?
Then the while loop stops.
The while loop stops. Okay, that's it, right? 0. Okay. So this while loop and the for loop, how would you describe the output?
Well, they both have the same output, except the while loop prints. It does 5, but it doesn't print it. But the for loop doesn't do 5. It just stops at 4.
Are you okay? Tanay, don't rub your eyes that much. It's not good for your eyes. Okay? So the for loop and the while loop do the same exact things. What is the main difference between the for loop and the while loop?
The difference between the for loop and the while loop.
What is the difference? What is the difference between them? The output is the same. They both generate the same output. But what would you say? How would you describe what happens in their code?
The while loop Well, it keeps on. It's basically like it's longer.
It's more code, right? It's more
Yeah,
code.
it's more
Okay.
code. The while
So
loop
in
is
the
more
for
code.
loop, we only have 2 lines of code.
Yep, but in
In
the
the while
while
loop,
loop,
we have
oh,
4. So it's twice as much. Okay. Now the difference is that what's the other difference between the for loop and the while loop? What is the difference?
difference between the for loop
Yeah,
and the while
besides the
loop.
number of code, what's the difference?
Besides the number of lines, the while loop like goes all the way up to the top after it's done. The for loop it just keeps on going.
Okay, I'm not too sure I follow that. Now, in the main difference, the other main difference is that the for loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
The for loop, it will always loop a certain number of times. Okay. The while loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
It only loops while the condition is true.
Mm.
Okay. So with the while loop, you could set it up so that the condition, so you don't know, you could code it so that you don't always know, you don't always know how many times it's going to loop. Okay. Am I making any sense?
So kind of.
Okay. So let's look at this. Okay. So let's say I make this while loop. Okay. So while the counter is true, right, it will loop. Okay. So look what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do counter equals bool input. Do you see what I'm doing?
Mr. Hun is Boolean.
Yeah, it's bool boolean. So so what you have to understand is that the input function,
Mm-hmm.
it always returns a string. So you have to turn it into a bool in order to get it to create a boolean. Okay. So let's see if we can get this to work. Okay. So let's see if we can get this. Okay. Okay. Now here, counter is set to true, right? You saw me do that, right?
Counter is true.
So it's going to print the counter, okay, which is true, right?
Yep.
Now it's asking me true or false. So if I type true, okay, if I type true, is this condition still true?
Yep.
Okay, it's still true. So then it's going to print another true. You see that? It printed true again, right?
True, true, true.
Now, what happens when I type false?
Then it'll print false. No, it'll print nothing.
Oh, I think I did something wrong.
Huh?
Oops, I did something wrong. No, that was wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
did something wrong. Okay. You know what? I should have done this. I shouldn't have done it this way. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna do this. If answer equals false, counter equals false. Else, oops, answer. Oh, I'm sorry, counter equals true. Okay. Okay, that should work. Okay, so we're going to the for loop and then loops, loops, loops. Okay, now we get to this part. Okay. So it prints true. It's going to print true. It printed true. You see that? It prints true. And now it's going to ask me true or false. So I put in true. Okay. It doesn't actually, as long as I don't type false, it doesn't matter. I could type anything. It'll still be true. Okay. So counter is still true.
Okay.
And then it's going to print true. I think it's going to print true, right? No, did it do that? So it prints true, right? You see that? No, it didn't print. Did it print anything?
No, printed astrophysics.
Okay, so it prints true. Now it's going to ask me again, true or false, right? Now I'm going to type false. Okay, so now that I type false, then you see the counter answer is false. And so now counter is going to be set to false. Okay.
Okay.
Now what's going to happen with this while loop? Is the while loop going to loop again?
No.
No, because it's not true anymore, right? And what happened? You see it stopped, right? You see it stopped,
I
right?
don't get it.
I'm sorry?
I don't get it.
You don't get it?
Nope.
So as long as I type in, every time it asks me true or false, as long as I type in, as long as I don't type in false, it'll keep looping.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So with the for loop, you see the for loop? It loops all the time. Okay? That's what a for loop does. Okay? There's no possibility of it's not going to do the whole thing. Okay? Only it's the while loop. You can set up the while loop so that you can make it stop. Okay? Depending on a certain conditions. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So this is how most video games work. The video game will keep running until the user says stop. Okay? So I could say, let's say instead of true or false, let's say I make this into stop. Okay? Okay? So if you type stop, so if you ever type stop, okay, then the loop stops, the game stops. Okay?
Oh my God.
Okay? So you see here, right? We see here the for loop always does the same thing all the time, right? It prints 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then stops, right? But the while loop, right? The while loop,
Yeah.
okay, it's looping, but look, it's asking, do you want to stop? And I say no. Okay, if I say no, it keeps looping. Okay, keeps looping. Do you see that?
Okay.
You see that? It's looped. Okay, now it's asking me, do I want to stop? I say no. Okay, so I'm still looping. Do you see that? Look, it printed, how many times did it print true?
1, 2, 3 times.
Right, it did it 3 times, okay? Now, when I wanted to stop, now I can say stop. Now is it going to stop?
Yep.
Because I put stop, okay? So when I did stop, then the answer, the counter, stop is the answer, then the counter is set to false. So when the counter is false, then it stops, okay? So the while loop, you use the while loop when you don't know when you want it to stop, okay?
Okay.
The while loop is for situations where you don't know exactly when it's going to stop. Okay? The for loop is when you know exactly how many times you want it to do something. Okay? You have 100 people you want to send an email to, right? You already you wanted to send 100 emails. Right? You don't want it to just stop in the middle for no reason. You wanted to send 100 emails, right?
Yep.
Okay. It's only when you don't know when you want it to stop. That's
Mm,
when you do a while loop. Okay. So that's the main difference. Otherwise, they can do the same things, right? The while loop can do the same thing a for loop can do. Okay.
mhm.
But the for loop can't do the same thing a while loop can do, because the for loop doesn't stop. There's no condition. It just keeps going and going, going until you know the until you have for as many times as you want it to do. Okay. If you
Okay.
set the range to 5, it always loops
Mhm.
5 times.
Okay.
If you set it to 500, it always loops 500 times. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So again, so I have this. So I have so I have these two coding challenges, these two coding problems I want you to work on. Okay.
Okay.
So code a for loop that outputs the following: 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Code a while loop that outputs the following: 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So how can you code the for loop and the while loop to output only these 5 numbers: 5, 10, 15, 20, 25? How do we do that? Okay. So that's the problem I want you to work on from now until tomorrow. And if you have any, obviously, if uh, I want to see where you are, and I'll help you tomorrow. But try to work on them in between today and tomorrow. Okay.
Am I allowed to ask my mom for help?
Try to do as much as possible by yourself. Okay.
Okay.
Try to do as much. Try not to Google the answer. Try to do it yourself. Okay, because it's very simple math.
Like I might need to help with the while loop, but I think I can do the for loop by myself.
Try to do as much as you can. Try to do as much as you can, and then we'll see what you did tomorrow. Okay.
Okay.
And then and then this week, it's this week. I want to get. I want you to have looping under your belt, and then next week we're going to do functions. The rest of the month we're going to do functions and then recursion. So that's going to probably take the rest of the month to do, because they're much higher level. They're more they're harder concepts. Okay. Okay. Remember what I said. Who's right behind you right now?
Addie.
Don't
But
let
he
it. Don't
hasn't
let,
started yet,
Hey, it
so
hasn't started yet, but he can. But do you think he wants to? Do you think he wants you to stay above him?
no,
No,
probably not.
no. He told me no. What happens? What would happen if if you became a tech billionaire and he wasn't? Would he be happy?
No, he would want me to employ him and ask for like
No. He doesn't want to be your employee.
he'd ask for 10% of the company,
No, he
and
doesn't.
and then if I say no, he'll be like, "Please, I'm your friend, please," and I'm like, "That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter right now."
I
'Cause,
mean, you could. I mean, I would say, I told Addie the same thing. I'm gonna tell you, don't do business with your friends. It's not a good idea. It's best.
well,
It's
my friend, what if
what
me and my friend make a company? Then what?
a lot of friendships, many friendships have ended very quickly because when you have money involved. Okay.
My friend, my cousin's sister, she already has something. She sells stuff.
I would say, look, every situation is different, but I would say having already, I know you pretty well, and I've met Addie. I would say both of you are highly competitive. I don't think it would be a good idea for you two cooks in the kitchen. If you had a restaurant and you were two cooks in the kitchen, I think you'd have a lot of fights. So I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's best for you both have your own restaurant, and Addie should have his own restaurant. You shouldn't be in the same kitchen.
But there needs to be a lot of cooks in one kitchen to
Well, let's
maintain
say
the
one
orders.
chef. There should only be you can have many cooks, but you don't want to have two chefs in the kitchen. That's not a good idea. Am I making any sense?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Don't do business with friends. It's not a good idea. You want Addie to be your friend? and you
Yeah.
want to stay friends, don't do business. Don't do
Okay.
business. Okay, it's not a good idea. Okay, but I'm just letting you know, Addie's thinking like 10, 15 years from now. He's thinking, oh, Tanay is gonna become a tech billionaire. No, 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 no. I want to be a tech billionaire too. I don't want I don't want Tanay to be the tech billionaire, and I don't want to have to ask him for a job. He doesn't want to do that. Okay. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow, same time. Try to do both. Try to do, yeah, work on the for loop first, and then try to do the while loop. Okay. It's just math. It's just very simple math. It's not very complicated. So
Very
you're good at math. You're good at math.
simple.
I think it's math is pretty simple.
Simple. Addition
Okay.
is simple.
Oh, come on. Give me a, okay. Come on. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Let's see what you've done, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Take care. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.